Welcome to Beyond the Facade podcast. I'm your host, Luke Gordon, and I'm thrilled to have you join me in this space today. What we're going to be doing is diving deep into the trials and triumphs and truths of seeking authenticity. Becoming your true self isn't about a single action or moment. It's a relentless pursuit, a commitment to self that reveals the rich connection and meaning that our life has to offer. So whether this is your first time tuning in or you're a regular listener, know this: what you're building here goes beyond a conversation. You're here to challenge, to change, and to celebrate the incredible journey of becoming your authentic self. Because when you dare to show up fully, the rewards are immeasurable. So welcome to Beyond the Facade. Let's get started. Hey y'all, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with me. I gotta tell you, I am ridiculously nervous right now. I told people many times, put me in front of a crowd of a lot of people, and I'm way better than alone talking to a mic all by myself in an office somewhere. I'm going to try to do the best I can, just visualizing a bunch of you hanging out here with me, because that would be so much more comfortable than what I'm experiencing right now. But I think the purpose of this podcast is about authenticity. So that's what you're going to get a lot of. So I really want to let you know something about me when it comes to the people that are listening to this podcast. So I am absolutely in love with humans in general. I love human psychology. I love how people's brains work. I love finding out about them. And then also, humans scare the crap out of me. I think it's funny because I was talking to a friend one time. We were talking about a family reunion and how intimidating they are. And we also talked about a church group, like a congregation of people, and how intimidating groups of people are. But if you pick people out one at a time, it's a less overwhelming experience. And I think that I'm just going to visualize one-on-one conversations here with you, because that's what I do all day, every day. And just picture us connecting inside of this experience and us just being able to share a story together. So this podcast was created for people that are feeling stuck and wondering how to be real with themselves, wondering if it's possible to be completely authentic, completely real, and who they should be real with. And being authentic has been a struggle. So if that's you, what that version looks like for me is, if I let you all the way in and let you see parts of me, you won't like me anymore. You won't accept me. Maybe at some level you accept me now, but if I let you all the way in, it's going to be bad. So this exists in so many aspects of my life. I run groups and meet with individuals all the time, and I talk about it, and I'm still at a place in my journey where I have to remind myself that authenticity is where I get connection and where I feel the best parts. So anyway, I want to tell you, one of my favorite things to experience is hearing about people's embarrassing stories. And if I feel safe enough, I tell my own, and then there's a lot of laughs, and I really enjoy it, because in those laughs, I feel connection. And I think that person that's telling me an embarrassing story, it feels that much more relatable. And I don't know, whatever embarrassing moment it is, I want to hear about it. And I think about, I don't know, my brother, and I haven't asked him if I could share this story. Jared, I apologize, but he was, at one point, this is when he was dating, and he was going to go do a blind date, and he was introduced to her. And I might be getting this wrong a little bit, Jared, but he was introduced to her and he introduced himself. They were at a restaurant, super, super nervous, walks into the restaurant, and they go have a seat at the table, and he sits down, he sees somebody next to him, and he's like, hey, he's like, hi. And then he sits, and all of a sudden he realizes that's his reflection in a mirror, and he's looking at himself, and he's just like, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but I can only picture me like just being that nervous and all of a sudden saying hi to myself in the mirror on a blind date, going like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And I think that's me particularly. If I listen to myself in a recording, I'm like, I just don't know how I feel about me. So much of this struggle of authenticity is, I don't know how I feel about me. And what are people going to think if they see me? So so the podcast is called Beyond the Facade. It's like, okay, I have masks I wear. I have ways that I show up with other people, and they're either going to, if I put on the right mask, and this is my skill set, this is my superpower. I can analyze and size people up really quickly, and I can see what they want to see in me. And if I can read them and I know it and I can feed it back to them, I'm going to be accepted. I'm going to be liked. So pick the mask. I got my work mask. I got my church mask. I got my dad mask. I got my spouse mask. All these. Some of them look similar, but I'm wearing different ones to show up in different ways for different people. And I think for me, a big part of my journey was like, I got a lot of masks, but what's underneath? And that was scary to wonder, pulling it off and seeing like who's underneath there. And I used to go, again, the thought was is, will other people like me if I'm not picking a certain mask for them? But the real thing is, and I'm going to stop talking about me. I'm going to talk about the people that I work with, the really, really courageous people, is they start to learn that it's not about whether they'll like me, whether they will like me. It's will I like me? And that's such a scary journey to go on. One of my favorite books, I talk to the men that I work with all the time, is a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it produced a podcast conversation. I can't remember exactly where it came from. So hit us up if you know where it's at so we can make sure the right credit goes the right place. But it's talking about No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's talking about the just this mask showing up just in the best way with somebody. So you're being nice, and people are like, I like you because you're nice. But the problem is there's no authenticity. So in this podcast I listened to one time, it was about, who is that maddening for? Of course, the person that's the most maddening for is the person that can see these different masks being taken on and off. And that's the partner of the person that has the different masks. And everybody around them loves this person. They're like, he's the coolest thing since sliced bread, or I really like him. And the person that's living with them, sleeping with them in the same house with them, just sees the mask on and off, and also sees somebody that's very miserable. And they say that this is an integrity problem. So this authenticity problem is really an integrity problem. And it's not integrity as like I'm lying, like I'm telling you lies, but it's like, picture this, like a steel beam has a ton of integrity. Like you can literally build a bridge with steel beam, and 18 wheelers can cross it. Lots of weight can be put on. And that beam does not change shape. It does not take a different shape. And there's nothing you can do to it. It's just going to, well, mostly nothing you can do to it. It's going to keep its same shape. Take the opposite of that. Take a wet noodle. You take a wet noodle, put it on the counter, put it in a bowl, put it on a fork. It just takes shape of whatever it's around. That's an integrity issue. That's an authenticity issue. So the book No More Mr. Nice Guy just talks about how problematic it is. But the podcast highlighted how problematic it is for the people that you live around and with. Because what happens is, because they don't know who they are, the partner doesn't know who they're living with, really there's just a lot of confusion. There's nothing to anchor to. So the person who's wearing the mask, the person that has an integrity issue, he's trying to be everything that everybody wants to be. But the problem is nobody can do that. Nobody can really, truly like him or connect with him because they have nothing to anchor to. There's no substance there. So the reason he's going through all this work is to be liked and wanted and needed and valued. But the problem is the duplicity, the showing up different ways, never gives somebody to anchor to and say, okay, I want to be around you. I want to be with you. So much this podcast is going to be challenging what people are actually looking for in connection. They're looking for strong, they're looking for intelligent, they're looking for, I don't know, like we call it masculinity for men, of just what somebody wants to gravitate towards. And we want to tear that down. We want to poke a million holes in it. That's not actually what people are looking for. And I'm not just talking about women, I'm talking about men. The other men aren't looking to gravitate towards somebody that just doesn't have a bad day or somebody that's more powerful than everybody else. They actually gravitate to raw, real vulnerability. So there's this thing I used to carry around a yardstick, and this yardstick would represent something. It would represent basically all this measuring up I would do. And because in my life, I go around different places, my place of employment, church, groups, anywhere, friendships. And I look at people and I go, do I measure up? And I compare myself to them. And I go, and this is just mean, but it goes, yo, shoot, I'm not. Like, I have farther to go. Or no, I'm good because I'm farther ahead. So, and this damn freaking yardstick, I just visualize myself breaking over my knee and say, stop. There's nothing to measure to. You're enough the way that you are. Don't measure. And it was something visually that I'd have to do. So to put my measuring stick away, it took a lot of vulnerability to just say, I'm enough of where I am at. So the last thing I want to talk about is kind of like introduction to what this whole podcast is about, is something Brene Brown said. And she talks about vulnerability. And vulnerability is often people refer to it as like vulnerability. We all know is like, well, if you're in the mental health world or you're valuing this stuff, podcasts, you probably have a different view of it. But vulnerability for somebody that comes from a military background or is not used to this mental health stuff, or bear with me, it's not a good thing, but vulnerability is a key to connection. And she said there was this guy that came up after one of her conferences or something and said, you know what? I just love vulnerability. I just love it. But he was referring to their connection that comes from it. And she's like, I don't think she said this to the guy, but she's like, what? You don't know vulnerability then, because nobody likes vulnerability. Nobody likes that feeling that comes from being seen at that really just that seeing all parts of you, seeing something at that level of something you're insecure about. So the goal here for this podcast is to invite guests on and to be here with you and to explore the most vulnerable parts, the parts that are the most insecure, and then recognizing that this is an attachment thing. I am seeking attachment from other people, and maybe I'm looking for all the wrong places. So we'll discuss all sorts of things. I have much respect for people that are just seeking to make themselves better in connecting with others and to understand themselves and have a new awareness. And with bringing new awareness does not bring a new level of comfort. It brings a new level of discomfort, but the fruits of that are very rewarding. I'm just going to be excited to hang out with you. I don't know what our journey looked like. I'm probably going to go back to this podcast and have the vulnerability hangover. Even if I ever do listen to it and say, why did you say it that way? I'm going to challenge myself and going like, it's enough. So I'm just excited to be hanging out with you. Hey, thanks for joining us today. If this is something that you connected with, I'd love to meet with you more and talk about it. So what you can do is go to chooserecoveryservices.com or check the show notes. And there, what we can do is set up a quick conversation to meet. Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Facade, where we unmask the authentic self.